Next up, we have Ethan Blair from High Going School in our neighboring New Hampshire. And his project is You Can't Take Away Someone's Beliefs.
Throughout my trip to Tibet, you're probably wondering why I was there. I was traveling with a Tibetan medicine group from all over the world, offering Tibetans free healthcare because the Chinese government does not provide any for them. And most of them can't afford it. I have so many experiences I want to share with you guys, but because of the time limit, I can't tell you all of them. I was arrested multiple times. I was interrogated. I had my passport taken. I'm blacklisted for Tibet. Can't go back there. But I'm from the U.S., so they couldn't touch me really. But the Tibetans don't have that privilege. I wanted to share with you one story that really just one experience that I had that really that was the number one thing that hit home for me, and I will never forget throughout my whole life. I just want to first by saying that 1/3 of the population of Tibet is nomads, and that means they live off the land. They don't have any other way of life. They live in tents. They have small villages, and the Chinese government is coming and taking that land from them and just stripping it and making cities. So the overpopulation in China, all those people can transfer over to Tibet. And in best case scenarios, the nomads get to live in small neighborhoods with small houses, and they have no way to make money because the only way of life they know is living off the land. So I was on the way to Coconut Lake with my mother and a friend when my mother was going to invest in this incense company to support this local doctor, Tibetan doctor. And we didn't know that our trip was going to go in a whole other direction. We first got there and we were talking to the man that owns the incense company, and he was telling us, your investment's probably not going to be very successful because even if we do get big, the Chinese companies are probably going to come up with some false lawsuits against us and drive me out of business, or just offer me an offer I can't refuse. So then he wanted to tell us a story, and our interpreter wouldn't tell us, and we were wondering why wouldn't he tell us? And we didn't know. And finally, our interpreter agreed, but on one condition that we want to record it so her voice could never be tracked. And she was telling us that what he was saying, his family could be killed for. And we didn't understand. We were just going okay, we've seen these Tibetans be suppressed, but we didn't understand that level of suppression that they were going through. So he was telling us that around 15 years ago, the Chinese came in with big companies, not the Chinese government, these companies came in and started stripping away the Tibetans' land. And if any of them refused, they would be killed. And the ones that didn't refuse, they were put on refugee camps. And the refugee camps were in terrible conditions, and none of them have any other places to go, so they're forced to stay on those refugee camps. And he was telling us how the Tibetan people used it was on Coconut Lake, this beautiful lake. He took us to some of the locations that the Chinese have not touched yet. So we went to those locations, it was completely beautiful. He was telling us that the Tibetan people wouldn't even wash themselves in this lake because it was so holy to them, and it was strong to their beliefs. And now these Chinese companies are coming in and putting yachts on this lake and dumping their sewer into it. And it was just that I just couldn't understand how somebody could do that to these people. And then when you see the refugee camps, it was just so sad to look at this. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And when we were wanting to go out and leave, we didn't go to the refugee camps before. So one of my friends, Chandra, I was traveling with, decided to wanted to stop, and my driver was like, no, we're not stopping there. But Chandra was a pretty persistent person and made him stop. So we got out of the car, and when we got out of the car, we saw these people circled around this bowl of soup, and we were like this big pot, and we went to talk to them, and they were telling us about their situation. And we saw this man curled up over with a lot of people surrounding him, and we were like, what happened to this person? And he said, 30 minutes before we showed up, a bunch of Chinese soldiers started coming and firing their guns in the air. And the man came up, this old man, and picked up a shell and asked him why you were shooting at us. We're not doing anything. And after he did that, they beat him and shot him. And he was on the ground. And for me, it's just I just couldn't understand how somebody could do that. They're already defenseless, they have nothing to do. They were telling us that we were the first Westerners that's ever bothered to stop by and say anything, that everyone just pretends they don't exist, and nobody's ever come up to talk to them. And even just probably 500 yards away, there's yachts and hotels where Chinese tourists are staying, and none of them even bother. They pretend they don't exist. None of them even bother to stop by and just like offer them some food because they have no food. All the food they get is food that the Chinese government supplies them, which is hardly anything. So for me, I wanted to end the story by telling you that there's a way you can help the people on Coconut Lake, and it's a way that you can go and like donate to them, but for now, there's nothing really you can do for them. They're kind of stranded there and they're alone. My mother tried to convince them that we'll be back and we'll send help, but for now, there's really nothing we can do. The picture I took during one of these was a very beautiful place. It was like up in the heights of Tibet, and it was one of the Tibetan villages in the nomad land that hasn't been taken yet. And we were on there was at the very beginning of our trip, they were reading a 5-day period where they were reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There was like around 200 yogis reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And towards the last celebration of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, when they finally finished, they threw this big celebration, and they were throwing flare flags in the air, and it was just a beautiful moment. And I snapped this picture. I have a lot of pictures from that trip, but when my teacher was asking me, photography teacher, which one do you want to post, I immediately thought of this one, because it just proves that like no matter what you do to these Tibetans, you will never take away their beliefs. It's just such a strong image to me.
What's the crazy story about being Tibetan?
Me personally? Dude, yeah, I'm probably gonna go for it. Let's see. Probably the first time I was arrested because I wasn't used to it yet. I was just we used to it after a while because every single time we entered the city, we were the only white people there. There'd be a city of like 500,000, only white people there. And me and my friend Son, he's from France, we were just walking down the street, and all of a sudden these policemen run up to us when we're with our interpreter, and they start like yelling at us. We're like, why are you yelling at us? Like, what do we do? And the interpreter says, give him your phone. He takes the phone, just throws it on the ground, smashes it. And we're like, okay, we're sorry, we don't know what we did. And the interpreters are trying to tell him, talking to them, and they take us to their like Humvee, and we're sitting in the Humvee, and we're just like, and they take our passports, so we're just like, okay, we don't know what's going on. Neither of us has been in this situation before. Like, I've traveled around the world, but I was never treated this way because Americans are treated pretty well, but they don't really care. So the interpreter later on convinced them that there was only 2 of us traveling, and there was 15 in our group, and we were the only ones out in town. So they found out that there was 15 in our town, we would have immediately been deported. So we're just sitting there, and we're sitting there for a good like 30 minutes or so before the interpreter was like, okay, you can leave. And they just kind of walked away like nothing happened, and we were just kind of like, what just happened? Like, they gave our passports back and stuff, and they kind of passed them back, like, okay, you can leave, and we're like, okay, that was a little confusing. But after that, we had a lot like worse case of that, but it was like, that was the first time where I was kind of shocked. I was just kind of taken, I was just like, okay, I would get myself ready for what's going to come because that was at the beginning of the trip. So usually every single city we got into, me and Sol were the only ones that were allowed to leave the apartment. And he never used his phone, he never used the VPN again after that. And we were arrested nearly every time. Every time we left the city, there'd always be a cop car following us. And if we ever wanted to leave, we'd have to be like hustled into the van real fast before people could see that there was more people in our group. It was a fun trip.
And one more question.
What exactly is falling in his sky?
Oh, it's prayer flags. You can see he's throwing his box of prayer flags in his hand. He's throwing them into the air. It's a way of just kind of like, it's for the Tibetan, but it's kind of like, it's a way of celebrating. As you can see, there's a big, you can't really see it out of the picture, I have more pictures of it. There's this big burning pile, and they're throwing it into the pile. Everyone's doing it. You can see a woman behind him is one of the doctors I was traveling with. And they're just throwing the prayer flags into the air.